All right, thanks for joining today's Implementers Guide with a focus on the PDG Blueprint on credentialing. We, together with Legisym, created this webinar in order to give you a hands-on approach on or hands-on perspective on the PDG Blueprint.
Oh.
I'm here with David Kessler.
Oh, okay.
And we have, I'm also very proud having some PDG members here today as guests. So welcome everyone. David, can I hand over to you to give us a quick introduction, who you are and what Legisym is doing?
Sure, happy to, thanks. So as George said, I'm David Kessler. I'm the president here at Legisym. We started our business in 2008. We were very focused at the time on the CSAS space, the controlled substance ordering system space. Really changed the paradigm of that product, coming out of like client server based models into a more software as a service model. Really opened up the market for others to be able to utilize CSAS. We continue to improve that product for a number of years with certain enhancements, considerable ones noted kind of the years between 2011 and 2015. We now do the CSAS processing for large manufacturers, wholesalers, mid-sized companies, even small, more localized manufacturers, wholesalers, 3PLs and such. So we reach out to really work with trading partners at all levels with that, whether they're pharmacies, chains, independents, working all the way up through wholesalers and manufacturers. As such, we're real proud of the fact that actually we've never had anyone leave our service to go to any other competing products. So we feel like we're delivering a good product at a good value there. And we had many of our clients asking us for products over the years, and for the most part, we kind of said that wasn't something we wanted to get into. But in 2018, we were asked a number of times to look at the challenges around finding licenses and getting those into some repository to be able to access things that are, data that's very accurate and very frequent, both at the federal and state level. And so in response to that, we did release a product called License Verify, which does exactly that. So hundreds of different data sources that we go direct to bring that data into basically a centralized database, normalize that data, and then make it available to our clients through dashboards and APIs and things like that. So that's important to note because as we move forward, in 2020, we were asked by HDA and others to participate in an industry pilot around authorized trading partner status, very focused in the use case of sellable returns. And so we thought, yep, that's a good mix. We have that data that's in License Verify that will really help us in determining license status. We also knew a lot about identity, dealing with our background in CSAS, and so it was a good fit for us. And so we participated in that pilot, and then out of that pilot came an offering called Credential Solutions, which is us being able to provide the due diligence and issue credentials, which is going to be a big component of what George and I talk to you about today. So that's a little bit of history on Legisym and what I do with the company. Thanks, George.
Thank you, David. It's really impressive, your track record in this industry, and your expertise is really appreciated. So you also worked, I think, basically worked on co-creating or basically contributed to the blueprint. Yeah. We're
Legisym is members of PDG, and we focused where we could help. A lot of that was around the conversations around identity proofing and credentialing and such. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, and my support team reminded me of some organizational topics. So we ask you to basically paste the question you have in the chat. We try to address them during our webinar. If we do not touch them, we will do it at the end of the session. And yeah, that's what we basically do. So at the end, we have time for a short Q&A session. Yeah, so giving you a quick introduction on Spherity and who I am. I'm Georg Jürgens. I'm working with Spherity for 5 years now. Spherity is a company specialized in solving very, I would say, complex challenges in digital ecosystems where companies need to know who the other side is and they need to trust each other in order to do electronic interactions. And for that, we offer digital wallet and credentialing solutions. And we build, based on that technology, we build specialized solutions like the Caro application that is designed for solving the ATP challenge that we basically what we talk about today. And beside that, we also have a product under development called Digital Product Passport, where we ensure that that certain data of a product, especially of a battery. So in Europe, there's a battery regulation upcoming, which requires that batteries need to have verifiable data accessible to different ecosystem participants. And this is something where we support the industry, but also we would work together with the European Commission to ensure that they have a certain standards in place, or let's rephrase that they have solutions for certain standards they work on. All right, and today as well, we talk about our Caro application, and let's get one step back and have a look. Why are we actually having these technologies now in place, and why do we need to have, or why are we working on basically creating these kind of solutions? And I created this simple overview by explaining, okay, for us, and I think for everyone here, it's our main focus is to ensure patients' health and to protect patients from malicious drugs. And for that, we in the industry, we need to have a secure healthcare supply chain. And in this healthcare supply chain, we need to have trading partners that are compliant to regulations. And one of the regulations that is in place is the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, having exactly the same, basically the same focus on, at the end, creating a secure supply chain and to protect patients' health. And that's basically the why are we here? Why do we develop these solutions? Why do we collaborate all to have an open and interoperable ecosystem? Because we talk about, in order to have a secure healthcare supply chain, we need to ensure that all the actors on this supply chain can communicate with each other. And we have manufacturers here, we have pharmacies, but also we have authorities that have a requirement to exchange information, exchange data, being it product data, that need to be basically provided when a product is shipped from a manufacturer to a wholesaler. And each trading partners at the end using their own systems. And here they work with solution providers offering certain systems. And at the end of the day, these systems, they are communicating with each other. But here we have, at the end, we have not one system. We have basically a huge amount of different systems like SAP, TraceLink, RFXL, RxScan, like to name some of them. Yeah. And at the end of the day, they all need to be interoperable with each other. There are standards driven by GS1, for example, ensuring basically that each service provider follows certain standards. But we see, and especially the PDG recognized, that there need to be certain, basically a functional design principles for each of the requirements of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act. And just recapping on the requirements. So the requirement is that serialization must be in place. There need to be solutions for product verifications. There need to be solutions for tracing products. And last but not least, there need to be, every trading partner need to have processes and system in place in order to ensure that they only interact with trading partners that are authorized. So at the end of the day, there are different requirements that need to be fulfilled by trading partners and solution providers. So what the Partnership for DSCSA Governance, PDG, did is they created a working group, or at the end there were multiple working groups, and they looked at the requirements from the industry, requirements from the solution providers, and basically all based everything on the regulators' requirements. And they sat together and said, okay, where do we need to align on? What do we need to specify in order to have interoperable systems? So they came up with 6 chapters describing functional requirements, or basically it's a functional design documents. For example, about how to exchange TI data or how to verify products, or at the end to how to trace products. And today's focus is how to use credentialing and user authentication solutions, because it's a little bit, this chapter 6 is a little bit a cross-functional chapter because it touches the product verification angle, and that's why we use today the product verification use case to explain you the credentialing chapter. David, have I forgot anything?
No, I think that's a good overview of what those chapters look like and what our focus for today is. And obviously, we'll take whatever questions come up around chapter 6 that we can possibly handle.
Perfect. And I want to make you aware that the PDG also runs public webinars, and these webinars are we just posted the registration link in the chat. So tomorrow is a webinar on product verification, on verification requirements. Next week on tracing, and in 2 weeks there will be a deep dive on credentialing. So please feel free to register here and to get a detailed overview of what is written in the blueprint and how to work with them. All right. And now we come to basically to the core of our webinar, and having a look on the requirement on how to authorize a trading partner in a product verification. Just to give you an overview, a product, according to the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, a product verification needs to be done in case a wholesaler receives a salable return, or if a dispenser has a suspect product. And in the area of the suspect product, on the right side, a dispenser needs to verify against the product if the product identifier is registered in the manufacturer's database. So in this case, a dispenser has a direct communication channel with a manufacturer. And in that case, they actually need to know with whom they're talking to. But you also have the chance to use a verification routing service to verify products in case of exception handling. And also very interesting is in the new GS1 standard for PI verifications, there is a context called status. So this enables trading partners to, at any given time, check the status of a product identifier against a manufacturer's database. This is quite interesting because this will not trigger any further action to continue with investigation if a negative response comes in. This slide should show you a quick overview a very abstract overview how a product verification routing service works. So when let's take a dispenser scans a product which is for him suspicious, does not the color on the package is not really what it should look like. Yeah, so he has good reason to believe, okay, I better verify the product identifier on the package. So they scan the package with using a scanner, and they need to have a verification routing service in place. So at the end, it's software, and the software will take the scan and create a request message. And this request message is then sent to a lookup. And this lookup, it works a little bit like Yellow Pages for GTINs. You have basically a telephone book for GTINs where you then find the GTIN and the associated endpoint. Yeah. So this ensures that the requester will end up at a responder's VRS. So the responder is usually then a manufacturer. And the manufacturer also has basically as an inbox the verification routing service. And they are then able to receive a request message and to basically look up if the product identifier is in their database. And in case everything is listed, and remember, we talk about serialized products, and then they are able to send a response. So this is, from a technical process, perfectly working. GS1 standardized the data method, the message exchange, and so this, from a product verification interaction, this is perfectly working. We have just have a look quick. Want to give you a quick look into the message body. It looks quite technical now, but what I want to show you is what information does the manufacturer receive when they get an incoming product verification. That's why I wanted to show you the current status of the body of the message. And here you find the location number, you find contact information like email, telephone data from the requester, of course the GTIN, then some serialized numbers, expiration date, a context, why is the verification done? Is it due to a suspect product verification, for example? And then of course some correlation UUID, etc. Now, going back to the location, global location number. This is part of the verification method. And this is where we started 3 years ago, looking deeper into that message body, because we worked together with a manufacturer, and they did some investigations if they can actually identify a trading partner using a local location number, and if they can also check if they have an authorized status. And based on their compliance audit internally, they discovered that the GLN, or the global location number, was multiple times reused. It could have used by other trading partners, and they were not able to verify if the global location number really came from the trading partner sending the request. Additionally, they had no chance to actually look up a trading partner license or basically they had no chance to know if the trading partner is authorized just based on the GLN.
So George, I think that's really what we're building to here, right? Is how do we solve for using this same body of information to also be able to accomplish a ATP check where we're proving who that trading partner is and do they have the proper license or registration to be an ATP.
Exactly, and we had the constraint that we should not change the standard. So we were the objective of not changing and touching the standard. Yeah. So how could we add basically more security to this message, and creating these data message exchange more compliant to the not only more compliant to the ATP requirement written in the DSCSA. So because the verification works perfectly using this message body, it perfectly works, but we needed to add another layer of identification and authorization.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
So here now we come to summarize. So we talked about how a product verification is done using a verification routing service, and how a message actually looks like that is exchanged between trading partners. Now we want to give you an overview of methods that are available or that are out there in order to identify and authorize trading partners. And here, David, I can hand over to you.
Sure. Great. So just to, again, level set a little bit with current state, right? We know right now that we don't require an ATP check. That's coming here in November this year, but there's no requirement for that ATP check at the moment. And so what it looks like is that incoming message with that body of information that George just went over with the GS1 PI verification. So that comes through an inbound request. Again, no ATP check, but we do recognize that there's some challenges around just using that GLN alone to prove anything around authorization to move forward. But what it does allow right now is a verification response. So it's clean, it works, we know all that's good, but how can we move forward with utilizing some form of an ATP check really becomes the challenge and what we want to look at for some methods.
And maybe I can add here, David. So what happened between the solution providers? They had like a gentleman's agreement. Say, yeah, we will check our customers. Yeah, and I think there was a couple of years ago one call where they said, yeah, let's agree on everyone checks their customers. Yeah, but I think it's just an informal agreement, and it's very hard for trading partners to basically they cannot verify a solution provider outside of their contractual relationship. So that's beyond their their authority to do that. So it is really tough then for trading partners to rely on that gentleman's agreement, especially when an auditor comes in and say, hey, please give me proof that you did an ATP check. Yeah, auditor, there was like a gentleman agreement back 3 years ago, and that's why I built my compliance on that. That might not go out well. Yeah.
Right. So I think the challenge there is that we're stating there's some VRS providers that may do some form of a check, right? But if you don't know that for sure, and you don't know exactly who you might be connecting with and whether they're doing that, then that gentleman's agreement or whatever that kind of commitment was starts to get eroded. And that's where the concern lies, right? Is, do we really know the check is being done? What's the accuracy? What's the frequency? Can we trust it? Basically, is the question there. And then obviously you brought up the point about being able to provide proof, right? What's the documentation? What's the logging features? And so again, current state has some challenges. Things may be done, may not be done. But the idea here is how can we rely on it going forward? What methods are available to us that would either be, a very manual method or a very automated method? What would that look like? And so I think that's what we're going to talk about next.
Exactly, and just to add, this no ATP check is not an option described in the PDG Blueprint. To be clear, that's just the current state, but it's not part of the blueprint. There we have other methods that are described that we come to.
Thanks for clarifying that. Yep. So, what would that non-credentialing method look like, right? So, it would be a manual process. The incoming message would come in. Just like it does today. And then the line of questioning starts, right? Who is this trading partner? Are we positive that we can verify they are who they say they are? Maybe that's a yes with a direct relationship. Perhaps it's not, right? But for sure, we need to ask that question as that inbound request comes in. Then we move on after identifying the trading partner into, are they an authorized trading partner? So do they have ATP status? What does that look like? Well, depending on the type of organization that's asking that question, you have to look up certain things, right? Whether that's a federal registration with FDA, whether that's a state board of pharmacy license, we have to know, do they have that right type of licensing in order to gain ATP status? But it's not as simple as those being independent of each other. Those actually have to be combined, because we have to know, once we identify this license and once we identify this trading partner, is that trading partner in control of that particular license? So we have to go far enough in order to make sure that, yes, indeed, this particular trading partner is in control. They own this license, and that license is in good standing. We've checked all the boxes. Obviously, as noted here, there has to be some type of logging, some type of way to prove what's taking place, and then a response can be made. That these things might be answered through emails, phone calls, some type of operating procedure, a manual method that would be done from when that request comes in to when that response goes out. And one other thing to kind of point out here is, as we've worked through this, it was pointed out to me that, you know, when that process comes in through like a VRS provider, the request comes in, and then when it turns into this manual check where we're asking those questions, that response can't go back through that VRS process, right? It turns into a manual response in some way. Again, email, telephone, some type of a process. But the inbound came in through VRS. We had to ask all these questions to manually verify everything. We can no longer get back to that connection to respond back to the VRS process. So it turns into, again, a very labor-intensive method, one that can be done certainly as an alternative process, but one that is not as streamlined and certainly not an automated way of responding. So, George, did I cover everything there you wanted to talk through?
Yeah, I think that's what you pointed out. I mean, thanks also for the good overview. I mean, that's now shows what work is being done in verifying at the end and trading partner and partner's identity, and check if the trading partner's ATP status is in place. And I think important here is, as you mentioned, there is, when you use this verification routing service, these two systems create like a communication channel, and it's just open for a certain period of time, and then it closes again. So you need to have, so you have two options. You have a process in place where you can verify the status within this time frame, or you tell the other side, we'll come back to you on the manual process, but I cannot do this in this like in 1 minute or 2 minutes, how long this VRS channel is open. I think it's not even 10 seconds, but let's assume in this let's say 1 minute. There's no way to do that manually. So there's a process up there, and then you need to come back to them, following up via email or telephone to give them the answer if a product is actually in good standing or not.
But it's a possibility, right? It's a method that can be deployed. And so we just certainly want to point that out, what that might look like, the steps to go through to verify the trading partner and the status in this idea of a non-credentialing method.
Exactly. It's always a compliance decision within the trading partners.
Agreed. So if we were to look at automating the ATP check, what would it look like? And so we're sharing again here that body of the message where it has the GLN and other information available. But now what we've done is we've also added a header. That header will now include a presentation of the ATP credential. And what that's doing is it's now allowing us to have information within that exchange that allows us to then identify the trading partner. So we know who they are, we've proven identity, and it includes the ATP check. So we know that they have an authorized status in order to actually go through an automated response, right? So we're no longer having to kind of jump out to that manual process that we looked at a minute ago, but rather all of that checking is being done and proven here in the header information.
And this is also, I mean, this is also acknowledged by GS1 and part of the implementation guidelines, so that's not nothing outside of any standard. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, thank you. So what would this look like now using the OCI credentialing method, using an ATP check that would be in place through credentialing? That incoming verification request would come in just like it does today, but now the presence of that ATP credential, that presentation would now be there. It would also include any necessary logging of information, basically an audit trail of what's taking place, and the verification response can then be made all within that kind of connection time period that George was talking about a minute ago. George, I think if you hit the slide one more time, we can kind of dig into what that automation looks like. And so again, that check there that you see in the middle, because that credential, that ATP credential, that presentation of that information is there and available, now we're answering that initial question: who is the trading partner? Can we trust that they are who they say they are? Yes, we've made those determinations by issuing those credentials. We move into the trading partner authorization status. Yes, the appropriate license or registration for that trading partner has been made. We've logged all that. We have an audit trail behind it all. And so now we're filling that requirement to have that ATP status checked off immediately as that inbound message comes in, and that verification response can make that full cycle back.
Exactly, and you said the full cycle back, and that's also important because the same steps happens when the responder sends something back to the dispenser, so that or the requester, yeah? So the other side can also be sure actually who answered me, yeah? Because it's both sides. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for simplicity's sake, we're showing kind of that singular path of it going from the initial request to the response. But absolutely, that ATP check, that knowing who you're talking to, making sure they have ATP status, regardless on whether or not they're a requester or a responder, that full cycle is being made through that ATP status, through that credential.
And again, it's, I think, a true statement saying this is all not homegrown. It's more also following a certain standards. We see the Open Credentialing Initiative now for the first time, but it's basically the organization taking care of basically the process, how to identify and how to verify an ATP status of a company.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? I mean, we're talking here is a couple service providers in the space, but as we go through the presentation and we start talking more about OCI, that group of providers and trading partners that are contributing to all this, basically supporting that PDG Blueprint and all those chapters, we'll get more and more into what everybody's doing to be interoperable and automated in this process.
Yeah. So because you mentioned solution providers, and let's quickly go into that. I think the left side, the requester and the responder, they do not necessarily need to have the same wallet provider. I mean, there can be different wallet providers in this area or different issuers, but still they're interoperable. They are able to communicate with each other. Yeah.
Because it's based on those standards.
Exactly.
Yes. Let's go ahead and expand this whole thing if you would. Sorry. No. Thank you. Awesome. Okay. So because we're coming to you with the idea of talking through some of the PDG Blueprint, it's pretty important for us to also use some of the charts, tables, and things from the PDG Blueprint. This is one that's referenced quite often. This kind of purple diagram here, I want to be sure to kind of walk us through this so that it looks a little bit like a flow. It's not exactly a flow. It's really pointing out three very particular elements: the requirement, the documentation around that, filling that requirement, and then the methods available. And so obviously as stated here in the blueprint in chapter 1, it talks about the threshold for making sure that a trading partner is identity proof, that we know who we're dealing with, and that they have authorized trading partner status, basically being authorized in line with the DSCSA requirements. And so that's all outlined there in chapter 1. And then obviously the other supporting chapters support that, like the credentialing. But then as you move into that credentialing idea, there has to be some way to document that process of how we're confirming those thresholds that have been met as identified in chapter 1. And so that's really there in that second box, noting that there has to be some process, some way of documenting, keeping track of what that identity proofing and authorization look like. And then in the lower two boxes, it's really saying, okay, look, there's a couple methods here that we need to recognize. One method being the digital credential. That's the verifiable credential, the W3C credential, things that you'll hear, different terms, all basically tying back into this OCI conformant digital credential, proving out we know who they are, we know their status, or alternately an alternative process that would have some, again, kind of like that manual process we walked through, asking all those same questions, but again, being able to say that I've met that requirement there in chapter 1, and then I've been able to document that information as my alternate process. Both, would fulfill the requirements. Again, two different methods here. We just want to be sure and tie back what we're talking about in these examples to what you would see if you went through chapter 1 of the blueprint.
Exactly. And here we, we summarized a little bit the methods. That is, I would say, this is we can say it's a little bit solution provider biased slide, but here what the message here is: the authentication and the authorization, basically. Who is the trading partner, and is the trading partner licensed? Yeah. What we see why we developed OCI credentialing, because we can automate it. So it's automated in every VRS interactions, and it's happening very close to real time. And we have a high standard of security in these OCI requirements, asking from digital wallet providers, but also from credential issuers. And on the other side, the non-credential method. At the end of the day, the trading partner, it's a trading partner decision what to do at the end of the day. But when you have this alternate process, it comes down to manual policies a trading partner need to implement to verify who the other side is, and also to have lookups in place, or access to lookups, or access also to services offering such lookups to check licenses. And this all depends on the quality of internal policies and processes. And at the end of the day, what we did on the credentialing side is we standardized all this to ensure a high level of quality and a high level of security for everyone who is running around in the ecosystem, having OCI credentials and presenting them to each other. And here in the OCI, it's an ecosystem of trading partners, of solution providers. We have developed conformance criteria that allow us to run audits on solution providers if they're meeting the OCI requirements. I invite you to our website. We have a pretty amazing website, I have to say, with a lot of resources on basically on all our conformance criteria, on actually also why credentialing is required. We have basically, and you can see behind the community page, you see who's a member, where are we coming from, and we have here also summary of what member organizations have early adopter programs in place. So this site will guide you to the solution providers who can help you getting started. And important. Here you find also on the update side, you will find news, you will find events, also events that are not only OCI events, of course, events that are happening in the context of DSCSA, and also some innovation events, because we as a group, we think also about what can happen beyond after DSCSA when we have all these identity credentials in place, what can happen after. So, but looking at the time, David, I would say, let's have a quick.
Yeah, we probably need to.
Yeah. So, what's ahead of us is we have some screenshots with you how it actually works in our application, but we will quickly walk through this. If you want to see a demo, if you want to get a demo of the solution, please reach out to us, because this will not replace a full demo. So, of course, it's a web application. You have an option to log in, to register yourself, and you will have a dashboard. And in the dashboard, you can see the credentials that need to be acquired, the identity credential and the ATP credential. And we have actually a fast track implemented. So when you, at the end of the day, you need to acquire an identity credential and the ATP credential. And if you start with the identity credential, we will hand you over to David.
Yes, so we basically there's a number of different methods in order to get this data in here. For simplicity's sake, it's easy to kind of show a web portal for entry and collection, and so this is basically walking us through collecting some information about the company, who, again, the identity, who they say they are. So we're going to collect some information. We're going to use that information in a method to provide a level of assurance. And so if you're familiar with NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, there's 3 different levels. Level 2 gives us a very reliable certainty that we've kind of checked all the boxes of doing enough due diligence to then say this company is who they say they are. You'll see references to that NIST assurance level in the PDG information, also in OCI information. But basically what it does is say, okay, I've collected this information, I know who I'm dealing with. And then after that, George, we can go to the next slide. We're using that information to then also gather information about the license for that ATP status check. So again, the due diligence that needs to be made against that license. So maybe it's a Board of Pharmacy license. Does that license remain in good status? And is that license controlled by the identity that we just proved out? And so with that information being collected, the due diligence that happens behind the scenes, then we're able to issue those credentials over to the digital wallet. So whoever that digital wallet is, whoever that issuer is going through some type of a process to get that information collected, and then that due diligence performed and issued credentials, if accepted, right, over into the wallet.
Right, and if I have all, is it a true statement? If I have every document, all my information handy, that it's actually quite fast process?
It is. And again, there's a few different methods in which it can be collected, right? And so some information can be done up front, some can be done on the fly as the onboarding takes place. And so again, that can be very fast depending on the method chosen. because again, we want to allow companies to have different ways that they can submit that information. But once that's in and collected, it can be, very, very quick. Some in some ways, depending on what the information it comes in, it could be less than a minute to, get the due diligence done. If that information is electronic and available, a little bit slower, obviously, if we're getting into checking, paperwork and such, and cross-referencing different sites to make sure that information is correct.
And once this is done, you have your credentials in your current application, and now the magic happens. Actually, there is no integration anymore required to any other verification routing service provider, because we already, as with the Spherity application Caro, we integrated to all of the verification routing service providers. And with that, they can use now your credentials in product verifications on your behalf, of course. Yeah. So let's have a quick look into a VRS transaction. How does it look like? A lot of data in such a transaction, but and this is also what I want to point out. So in terms of product verification, the VRS will always be your leading system. The credentialing service in the background is more an assisting system, ensuring that you communicate in this context only with authorized trading partners. So let's have a look at two data fields. Yeah, it's a correlation UUID. Yeah, it's basically an ID of an event. Yeah, and the event contains of a request and a response message. And in the VRS, you will see are the credentials attached to the request and to the response. And if you see this, everything is fine. Everything is okay with this request. So you have a basically this company is a manufacturer. You responded to a wholesaler, and in this request, you did an authorized trading partner check. If you now want to learn more, yeah, how does these credentials look like, and with whom did I actually interacted with, and on a more detailed level, you can go into our application, search for the correlation UUID we saw earlier, and then you see all the events with the credentials that were used in order to verify the counterparty, and of course the credentials that you, as in this case a manufacturer, presented back on the response. So it's an interaction between these two applications. And I usually say, and we get asked this a lot, our app, you need to log into that to acquire your credentials, and at the end of the day to monitor transactions, or an audit case if you need to prove to someone that you really did an ATP check. And this is where then such an application comes in to find basically proof for certain transactions.
George, if I could, I just want to kind of point out a little bit more about the compliance side on the audit trail. So you've noted the audit trail that's part of these transactions, right? The transaction history piece of it, but it's even deeper than that. So if it ever needed to go back to, like, say, the issuer to say, well, how did you prove identity? How did you prove ATP status? Yes, we have all the audit logs that are there for those transactions, but we are taking it all the way back to that process of issuance. And so again, in the need of an investigation or something, we want, trading partners to have the information available to provide those investigators what they need in order to understand what took place, when, why, answer all those compliance questions.
Exactly, David. That's what we, at the end, we are there for our customers and for trading partners, for in case they run into an audit. Yeah.
Which would be all the same questions that are asked if it was a non-credentialing method, right? Those same questions are going to be there regardless on whether this efficient, automated, reliable process is there, or if it goes to a much more manual process where those things are having to be logged in a different fashion. So we're not suggesting that those questions aren't on both sides of this. We just know that we've covered those check boxes to make sure that that information is being captured and available.
Exactly. And here we also ask, yeah, okay, can I print this? Yes, there can be a report printed, and then you have everything printed and can hand over to the auditor. Yeah, how can one actually start? So let's have a look. Who already started looking into this? We have service providers, mainly VRS providers, and also some companies working for dispensers, who are integrated into with basically how it works. They're integrated with Spherity, and on the other side, Legisym is also integrated with Spherity. So it's basically a integration. Basically, integrated partners here is verification routing service providers who perform product verifications. And if they in future add to their portfolio an electronic tracing system, we can also use exactly the same architecture. Yeah, but here we need to look on more on the requirements in future. And on the other side, we have early adopters who are either on basically using this in production, or the majority is using that on staging on their test environment and explore credentialing as an early adopter. Some of them are already our customers, some of them not, but this is only the reason that it's a matter of process with all this vendor onboarding, etc. So that's basically currently being done. So we have quite a lot of traction here, and also pointing out that we have requesters and responders here on the service. How to start is it's basically on the trading partner side, it's a 3-step process. Yeah, so we can give you a Caro account. So there's 2 options. Either you contact us via email and we can give you access to account, or by end of the week we will have an option to register yourself on our website and then get the account you need. The second step is requiring the credentials from Legisym. So what we explained was the process to get the credentials used for production, but we also have the option then to give you, under the same process, the credentials for testing. That's also actually also very, very, very good. And yeah, you always get a test account with that, but that's another story. And in the background, as I said, we connect your VRS to your tenants so they can communicate with us when they have a product verification in their inbox, and they need to verify the credentials that is part of the message. And yeah, all your VRS at the end needs to do is they need to configure your VRS instance to enable credentialing, and that's basically that's only the technical side, but on the technical side, that's where we can have what we can do for you. We have an early adopter program in place. It's open and it enables you to get a free access to our application. You don't need to at the end, you don't need to sign anything now. It's available online. Just contact us and become a member of the early adopter program. I just want to make you aware that we have basically this program will end of next month, end of April. So please, if you're interested in getting started testing credentialing with your VRS, sign up for your program and we will help you out.
And George, the credentialing is free as part of that program as well.
Exactly. So that's then the next slide. We have considering. I mean, we're talking now with 2 companies, David and myself, but at the end there's one offering. So we have agreements between us that there only one contract is required at the end of the day to get credentialing, and you can sign up with us and get the credentials from Legisym in that context. And that's basically our webinar on the PDG Blueprint and a bit on the implementers guide.
Yeah, hopefully we've done a thorough and accurate job of walking through this. I know it's a lot to kind of pack into an hour. We would love to take any questions, either maybe a few right now, but certainly if anyone would like to email or call us, we can set up some time to talk through any questions that might be there. All right. Well, thank you all very much for sticking through this. George, great job getting it all set up. I appreciate the opportunity to talk through it with you. And we look forward to seeing everybody in the chapter sessions that we talked about earlier that PDG is hosting.
Perfect. Thank you, David, for doing the webinar together with me. Thanks all for coming. And yeah, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions.
See you guys at HDA next week in person if anyone's going to be there.